But it is my great joy to be here this morning, so I still win, even though she loses. All right, so by way of introduction, you can probably tell I'm a little bit festive themed. Advent is here. So you'll all be different in the ways that you celebrate Advent, if at all. Calendars, candles, whatever other ways your families choose to celebrate the run-up to Christmas. Full disclosure, didn't know how Christmassy to make this talk, but I like Christmas, so it's going to be a bit Christmassy. Because I know there tend to be two types of people this time of year. I like to call them elves and Scrooges. So, elves have their trees up already. The decorations are there. They've intentionally listened to Christmas music, and they may have already indulged in a Christmas film or three. Scrooges tend to roll their eyes at that. Doesn't mean they don't love Christmas, it's just too soon. So, I'm here today to tell you that I am an elf. I work in primary schools, so it's pretty hard not to be an elf, because I also have kids of my own, so Christmas has been talked about for the last 4 months, because children. But I have a special bag of Christmas socks that comes down from the loft purely for December. Yes, I am wearing it now. But why do I do that? There is a practical side to my Christmassy madness. I do a lot of music at my school. I'm in charge of the choir. And in order for them to get ready for all the Christmas things that are happening now, I have to start practicing and preparing a long time in advance. That's what we think about at Advent. We're thinking about the thing that's to come. So if I want my kids to be ready and all festive for the Christmas fair, I need to start practicing some songs in September. So in order to do that, sometimes I have to physically prepare myself even when I don't feel like doing it, which is why I often wear festive things. Now, the kids at school and my boys, particularly like these ones, purely to show that I have no sense of embarrassing myself in front of you, these are the go-to first ones to break out in order to make people feel festive. However, they steam up, so I won't be wearing them for the whole thing. But also, as a Christian, it's important that although, yes, Christmas in our culture is a bit way over-commercialized, and it does detract from the God-given meaning, that doesn't mean we shouldn't get excited about it. Because it's fundamental to everything we believe. God came as a man, born to a virgin, in complete obscurity in the back of beyond, as a gift freely given to me and to us, so that we may know God eternally as our everlasting Father. And surely it's okay to be excited about that. So, I'm obviously biased, but over-commercialization is definitely better than persecution, and we have to remember that we have brothers and sisters in other countries that aren't as fortunate as us, and rather than having to deal with the tax, they're having to deal with the fact that they can't share what they believe with others openly. And so, if any of you are a bit cynical about Christmas, it's worth realizing the freedom you have and enjoying that and praying for your brothers and sisters who don't have that same freedom. But also take the opportunity to share the good news too. So, this is the easiest invite of the year. We live in a world that kind of understands Christianity as something that other people do, and that's something you get along with in your own space and time. When it comes to Christmas, our friends and family, the people who don't know Christ yet, kind of go, oh yeah, it is kind of about that. So it's the best time to invite your friends to be part of something. It's also the best time to serve your friends and show them a part of what we believe. So that's just a little side note. It's not the main part of my preach, but I just also thought it's important to remember that we're called to be community where we are, and to also invite other people into our lives, but also go into other people's lives too. We can often sometimes have everything gravitate around us and expect people to come to us, but sometimes we've got to go to where the people are too. And I don't think you're not doing that. I just want to encourage you to keep doing that. So, Christmas. We all know about Christmas. There's lots of important ingredients in the Christmas story. I'm going to focus on one today. There's really important imagery. The Bible is very careful with its choices it makes and the details it emphasizes. I assume that we know that. So again, slight tangent, but I'm assuming most people sat in this room believe in the Bible. It's a bit awkward if you say no if you're sat in the front. But we have scientific and historical evidence that makes it a really trustworthy source. But also, more so, we have to understand that if it's not true, there's no reason for us being here. So we need to make sure that we believe this is true. And if you're not here believing this is true, please go and do some research. I'm happy to talk to you about it, but it's something that's well worth putting your life and investing everything into it, because if this isn't true, you shouldn't be here. There's no point. It's just another social plug. But the Bible has authority, and we want to live a life that's not just in blind faith, but also in reasonable faith, that we can justify to people why we believe in God, of time and eternity, and of history, and of our future, and of everything. Anyway, I want to go tangent. What was I doing? Oh yeah, ingredients. So, yes. Another side note, actually, just while I'm finding my place, which we're on tangent. If you do have questions, also don't be afraid to ask. God loves curiosity, and God loves children. He likes it when we're childlike, and I work with children and I have children, and all they do is ask questions. Sometimes it's annoying, but it's relevant and it's real. Why? But it's okay to ask God why, in the good things and the bad things, the things you don't understand and the things that can get in the way. Don't just shrug it off, ask questions. And I know John loves a really late-night phone call with a really deep theological question, just when he's unwinding. But in all seriousness, speak to people, have conversations. This should be a discussion. Don't live closed in any fears and doubts that you have. It's okay to have doubts. I'm named after a famous person in the Bible who, even when seeing Jesus resurrected, didn't believe him until he could physically touch the wounds. And Jesus loved that. Jesus was okay with that. Jesus is okay with us asking questions, just like I'm okay with my sons repeatedly asking why, when I've given them instruction. It's okay to ask questions. So be curious about your faith and about who he is, because the more you learn about him, the greater it will be. Anyway, ingredients. I haven't lost it, I'm back on it. So, rather than me talking at you for a little bit, can you, now I'm going to stop you from saying the obvious Sunday school answer, can you tell me some things that are really important about the Jesus story? So I'm going to say Jesus, because that's the Sunday school answer that everyone gets as a freebie. But give me some things to do with the nativity story that we know so well as Christians, because rather than me just telling you all
Wise men.
Wise men, fantastic. Shepherds, fantastic. Stable, brilliant.
Humble star.
The humble star, you get extra points. Pardon? Bethlehem, fantastic.
Camels.
The genealogy is really important. Again, sometimes, and it's incredibly easy to do this, we read genealogies and we go, skip. There's nothing wrong with skipping the genealogies every now and then, as long as you realise that they're important to God.
Joseph's dream.
Joseph's dream, fantastic. Okay, now, this man gets the points, because I'm talking about stars today. You might have noticed a subtle underweaving in the songs, but I'm going to focus on stars today. Because stars are wondrous, and they can cause us to know a bit more about God, and also to humble ourselves a bit, which is also important. There are many elements we could talk about. We've named quite a few, but I am going to focus on the stars. So, I'm going to go to Matthew 2. Feel free to join me. Alternatively, you can listen. I'm more of a listener myself, but if you like reading along, feel free. So, now, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of Herod the king, behold, the wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, "Where is he who's been born King of the Jews? For we saw his star when it rose, and have come to worship him." When Herod the king heard this, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. And assembling all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. They told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it is written by the prophet, 'And you, O Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For from you shall come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel,'" which is again why the genealogies are important, because they show that this is fulfilled in Jesus. Then Herod summoned the wise men secretly and ascertained from them what time the star had appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, now I find it really hard to read this without doing like an evil villain panto voice. "Go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word, that I too may come and worship him." And I always kind of picture an evil laugh. Because it's also to remember you can breathe life into the scripture. The scripture should have life in it. Don't feel like it needs to be stale. It should be alive to you. And again, when I'm reading it to my kids, if I just read it, it's not interesting to them until they understand that there's life in this text. So, I know that's a bit of a silly thing, but if you find reading the Bible hard, then read it like it's an expression of God's word to you, because it is. After listening to the king, they went on their way, and behold, the star that they had seen when it rose went before them, until it came to rest over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced exceedingly with great joy. And going into the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they fell down and worshipped him. Then opening their treasures, they offered him gifts, gold and frankincense and myrrh, and being warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they departed to their own country by another way. So, he says, why is that a big deal? This is a good question. Stars are impressive. It's an understatement, and the more I learn about stars, the more they blow my mind. I don't know if we have any budding astronomers. Ian, I can already tell that Steve appreciates a bit of science. But even if you don't, have you ever just as a Christian been caught off guard in a God moment that you weren't expecting? Because I remember really vividly, one of the best worship encounters I ever had with God was not planned, and it was a bit awkward. Because I was taking a school trip of children to a museum. So a few years ago I took the coach children to an exhibition called We the Curious in Bristol, if you've ever gone. There's loads of scientific exhibitions, interactive ones with great stuff. Whether you like science or whether you don't, it's an amazing place to go. But they aren't giving me commission, by the way. They have a planetarium. So we'd wandered around all these exhibits, learning about the body, learning about sound, learning about bubbles and animation and various different bits and pieces. And then creme de la creme, the pièce de résistance, was this planetarium. And so the kids were all excited. I was more head counting and making sure that we all had everybody there, as you do. And then we got in. They were like, "Oh, you can sit at the back or you can sit with the kids." So I was like, "I'll sit with the kids. Yeah, enjoy it." So we step inside this giant dome, and inside it's basically like a big panoramic cinema. So rather than one screen, the whole thing is a giant canvas. And it's comfy plush blue seats. I sit next to the kids and we're chatting away and suddenly the lights go dark and you hear this really dramatic voice. "Are you ready for an adventure?" It's impressive. And all of a sudden, the walls turn as if we're in the cockpit of some kind of flying spaceship. And the chairs tilt back. And we're faced with this endless sea of stars. And then fact after fact, they reel off about the galaxy. And we're taken on this exploration of just our galaxy. And just, my mouth is on the floor. And I'm trying really hard not just to go, "Jesus, this is amazing," because I've got little kids there like, "What are you doing, sir?" But I just physically felt something in that room, the tangible sense of God going, "Look at all of this, and look how much I care for you, and for these children, and for this planet." And it just changed me. I had to be professional. I couldn't, just start bursting into song as much as I wanted to. But I've got to be honest, I'm not normally impressed by those sorts of things. I'm naturally, unfortunately due to my father, a bit cynical, naturally. And there's nothing wrong with that. But just that, I'm not normally impressed by that. That was a massive God moment. And despite my elf approach to Christmas, most things I tend to be quite, not guarded, but I tend to think them through, not just carried away by the emotion of it. Whereas that moment just connected with my soul in a way that I wasn't planning to. I wasn't like, "Hey kids, let's go on a worship experience." Not at all. But I couldn't just help but feel incredibly close to God. And yet so far removed at the same time. Because it's kind of impossible to put into words really when we dwell on our relationship with God. How somebody who is outside of time and space can create all the stars and be in control of everything. Came to earth as a baby to humble himself so that he can have a relationship with us. Not because he needed it, but because he loved us. Crazy. So as you can gather, I was speaking in tongues under my breath on the coach journey home. But I genuinely just wanted to fall flat on my face. And it was one of the first times I could really connect with kind of the words that David would say in the Psalms. You can read them. And it's hard to kind of see it's poetic, but to actually connect with it from a head knowledge to a heart knowledge. I love that Steve prayed that for the kids. So often we can learn things in our head. It's really important to connect that head with that heart. So David says in Psalm 8:3-4, "When I look at your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars which you have set in place, what is man that you are mindful of him, and the son of man that you should care for him?" It's just amazing. So, what am I doing? I'm moving on. So, stars are a big deal. literally our life revolves around one. We separate our time by when we see it, which is the sun, daytime, and when we don't, which is nighttime. And it is huge. It's literally huge. People use the word literally. It's one of my pet peeves as a teacher. Oh, my arm literally fell off. It didn't literally fall off, did it? But literally, the sun is huge. The sun is gargantuan. So the Earth is no slouch. It's a giant sphere. Sorry, flat earthers. But it's so large that when you're stood on it, the curvature looks flat.
Yeah.
And if you take the height from the top of Mount Everest to the bottom of the Mariana Trench, that's the equivalent of putting a postage stamp on top of a soccer football.
Wow.
Crazy. And yet, this is where, hopefully, we do a little bit of trying to get our head around big numbers. If you had a James Bond style car, you know, the ones that could go on water as well as road, and you were travelling along the equator at 60 miles an hour, it would take you 415 hours to reach your starting point, which is over 17 days. And that's no toilet stops, no refueling, probably a lot of we're nearly there yet for my kids in the car. But, so the Earth isn't small. But if you imagine, for a moment, the Earth is a pea. Now, full disclosure, this isn't a pea. It is a petit pois. I am reliably informed by my wife. Fun fact, the first disagreement we had as husband and wife was over this. My wife likes lists, and I like following lists. I've got quite a literal brain, whereas Meg sees lists as more of a creative process to draw inspiration from, whereas I'm quite black and white. So she wrote a list. I came home, as men often do when completing the weekly shop, feeling quite proud about myself, expecting the fanfare and medals for my heroic feats as husband who completes shopping. And as I was unpacking the shopping, I was greeted with horror and disdain when I arrived back with shopping and this. She's like, "What's that?" I was like, "It's peas." "I don't want peas, I wanted petit pois." So ever since then, I now know that when she writes peas, she means petit pois. But regardless of whether it's petit pois or a pea, and to save any conflict from any married couples here that might want to avert disaster, this is a petit pois, but that might just be me. Anyway, this petit pois is the size of the Earth, and if this was the size of the Earth, the sun, in comparison, would be the size of a giant inflatable beach ball. You know, when you go to Christian events and one randomly bops around the crowd at any appropriate moments. So the comparison is that to that. The giant beach ball, the sun, would be able to hold 1.3 million of these inside it.
Wow.
If you weighed the entire solar system, all the planets and everything else in between, the asteroids and bits and pieces like that, the sun would make up 98.8%. It is huge. Another fact which I thought was great, sorry, I'm going to be honest, I really enjoyed doing the prep for this because I just got my mind blown every time I looked about this. But every second, the sun loses 6 million tons of its mass, which is the equivalent to 1 million African bull elephants every second. And it doesn't even make a dent. The sun, in comparison to the rest of space, isn't even that big. It's not even close, it's just the one we're closest to. There's a star called Arcturus, which is about 36 light years away, which I realise means that well, the light I see now existed before I was born. Which is crazy. I'm only just seeing the light, in fact I'm not even seeing the light yet, that actually was created before I was born. And yeah, depending on who you are, some people might think I'm young, some people might think I'm old. My kids think I'm old. But if you were to look at the night sky, the third or fourth, depending on what time of year it is, the third or fourth bright star in the sky, that light that you see now has been travelling at the speed of light 36 years ago to take you to where you are today, where you can see it. And Arcturus is about 25 to 26 times bigger than the Sun. So in context, I'm going to move off my petit pois. I'm going to make Earth a little bit bigger, just because it helps with the maths. This is now Earth. So the Sun is now 22 foot wide in diameter. So, not quite the whole way, but a fair amount. I think, what is it? Yeah, 22 foot in diameter is, I'm trying to think what the equivalents were. Well, if you like basketball, it's two basketballs that nets on top of each other. It's basically 3.5 of me. But there's a star So Arcturus, in comparison, is the length of a whole bowling alley, which a whole bowling alley. So that's us, and a whole bowling alley. Never mind a bowling ball, a whole bowling alley, which is basically 3 adult male giraffes stood on top of themselves and a little bit more in comparison to this. And there's a star that's even bigger, which isn't even the biggest star in our galaxy, called Antares, which they don't even know how big it is because they can't measure it because it's too big at the moment for our technology. But they know that if they put it in the place of where the sun was in our solar system, just its physical presence would reach to about where Jupiter is, which is mental. Now, it's 550 light years away, which means that the light we're seeing now from that star, because we can see it now with our eyes, is from before Columbus ever set foot in the Americas. Which just blows the mind that God could plan in advance when Jesus was going to be born to make sure that the star was there to get the light in the right place for people who are searching the stars to find the place to get there, to find Jesus at the right time. There's a God who's in control of all things. He's in control of the stars.
Amazing.
And when you think, again, sorry if I'm just throwing facts at you, but it just helps me to go, my God is bigger than my imagination and my expectation, because sometimes we make God a bit like us, and that's dangerous.
Yeah.
Because he's bigger than us. And one of the biggest things I find my friends who aren't Christians have with God is they try and picture a God who's finite, who's like us in our image. We have to remember we were created in his image. That doesn't mean that he is exactly like us, in fact, anything but. But yeah, so light travelling at 186,000 miles a second, which means, I'm just trying to remember, sorry, I've written it down. I can't remember where it is. I think it's something like, that's so fast that in a second it can go around the Earth 8 times. So it's that fast, but still it's taken 550 light years to get here. Just crazy. And then Job 22 says, "Is not God high in the heavens? See the highest stars, how lovely they are." It's not hard to realise why people used to worship stars. Some people still do. In fact, if you ever go to a beach in the sun, people still kind of worship them. They don't realise they are, but they are. But these aren't even the biggest stars in the galaxy. Our galaxy, which you'll hopefully know is the Milky Way, not the chocolate bar, has a projected estimate upwards of 200 billion stars. So in our galaxy, there's 200 billion stars, most of them bigger than our sun. And that's one galaxy. And there's an estimated 2 trillion galaxies that have so far been mapped. And they're still finding more. And yet God chooses to humble himself, to come down to this earth, because he wants a relationship with us. Just makes me want to, I don't know what to do. I don't know what the right response to do is. Apart from be thankful. This is, sorry, I'll stop throwing facts at you now. This will be my last one, but I do think this one's pretty impressive. So yeah, light can travel around the Earth 8 times in 1 second, as previously said. So at that speed, to go from one end of the Milky Way, our galaxy, to the other end at the same speed would take 100,000 years. And that's one galaxy. So it says in Isaiah, "To whom then will you compare that I should be like him? Says the Holy One, lift up your eyes on high and see who created these. He who brings out their host by number, calling them all by name. By the greatest of his might, and because he is strong in power, not one is missing." That's the God we worship. And you know, they theorize that there are far more stars than grains of sand on this earth. And God has a sense of humour, because in Genesis 1:16, almost as an aside, it says, he also made the stars. It wasn't a big deal to God. It wasn't hard. He wasn't grafting and working and, make another star, make another star. He just spoke, and they came into being. But that wasn't God's main concern. His main concern wasn't these stars that, he loves them, that's why he created them, for his pleasure. But his main concern that he thinks is special and that he put his image into is us.
Amen.
That's really important to remember at Christmas. The God of the stars, the God who knows them all by name, knows your name. And sent his son for you. So this God delights in his creation. He's been around before the stars and he'll be around after the stars. He sees them come and go and he delights in them. But important to remember, he also delights in you. So, the God who is outside of time and space came into time and space as a baby for you, so that you may be set free from all the things that leave you in the darkness of night and guide you into the light of the stars. It's no coincidence that stars have been used throughout human history to help us to navigate the world. And just as the Magi understood the significance of the star that rose and brought great joy, they went towards its light in search of the one who was promised. And it's important for us to realise that's been fulfilled in the star of the morning. So in Revelation 22, verse 5, it says, because they knew that one day the temporal son of this earth would be fulfilled by the eternal Son of heaven. And his radiance will mean the sun in the sky is no longer needed, for the Lord God will be their light. The God of the stars has become the sun that we need. So, every Christmas we sing about it and remind ourselves of the brightness that has broken into the darkness, for the light has pierced the night. It's really hard not to sing this next bit, so I'll just say it, but I really want to sing it. But hail the heaven-born Prince of Peace.
Amen.
Hail the Son of Righteousness. Light and life to all he brings, risen with healing in his wings.
Thank you.
So as we come up to Christmas, as we start singing those carols next week, they're not just words. I mean, they are, but they speak truth. They speak power into the God that we worship, the God that we love. And if you don't know that God, and you've been listening to me wittering on going, okay, but what does that mean to me? Then I would really recommend strongly that you ask questions. You can even ask him questions.
Yeah.
If you're real, if you're there, show yourself to me. The scary thing is you're probably real. So don't ask that if you don't want the answer. I always say to them, don't ask me a question if you don't want me to give you the answer, because God will answer your questions.
Amen.
Sometimes the answers aren't what we want. The walk as a Christian isn't always easy. In fact, Jesus promises us that it isn't. But it is worth it. It is
Amen.
so worth it.
Amen.
So, I just encourage you over the next weeks to not be afraid to be excited about Advent and to not share that good news with people around you. And when you look up at the night sky and you see stars, whether you've got twinkly fairy lights or you put the star on the tree or not yet, just remember that the God of the stars is the God who came as a baby to rescue us and to fulfill his promises to us.
Thank you.
For God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish, but have eternal life. For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but in order that the world might be saved through him. And I'd encourage you as well to read the rest of that bit, because often we only read the first half of that, but the whole of that passage is really important and sums up exactly what Jesus desires for his people.
Amen.
So, keeping it short and sweet. I'm not going to labour the point anymore, but I'd just like to pray for you if that's okay, and then I'll hand over to Steve. Lord, I just thank you for the opportunity to be your people.
Yeah.
Lord, I thank you that it is a pleasure to come here and just to be with others that love your name. And I just pray at this time of year where sometimes Christmas is so exciting and expected, and sometimes it's hard because we feel so much more the loss and the hurt that we might otherwise put aside. We have to deal with that. And Lord, I just pray for anyone in this room where Christmas isn't a great time for them, Lord, I just pray that you would put people around them, that you would speak into their hearts and you bring healing in your wings. And Lord, I just pray as a church that you would just make them missional focused. Lord, I pray for the carol service and everything else that's going on. Lord, I thank you for the raising for Ukraine yesterday. Lord, I just thank you that you've put this church in a place where it can reach its community. But Lord, I thank you that that's not the task of just the people at the front. Lord, I thank you that we are a body of believers that go out in your glorious name as you commissioned us to go and be like you, to be salt and light to this earth. And I just pray wherever we're at, in our workplaces, in our homes, Lord, even when we're doing our shopping and mixing up petit pois with garden peas, Lord, I thank you that you can use every opportunity as an opportunity to worship you and see you as the God of all things and be the God to all people. Thank you that you came as a baby. Thank you that you saved us. Thank you that you give us that gift freely and that all we have to do is accept it. Help us to love you and love others in your glorious, perfect, precious name.